share a little bit about what's next as far as TI Crest program, and as we're approaching mobility and being able to support that, whether somebody's in the office or anywhere else. And as Joshua mentioned, we're gonna stop at each of these sections to give you some time to ask some questions. And please use the chat box, and then Joshua will present the questions to me, and we'll ask them as we go along. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat box, and we'll cover as many questions as we can. And then at the end, I think we'll be able to open it up for questions. So a little bit about TI Crest's telework story. We started the program in 2009, and really the main driver in 2009 was to reduce our real estate footprint. We knew that people were working differently. We had a large presence in the New York City area where we had high real estate costs, and we wanted to find a way to be able to reduce costs in the organization as well as provide benefits to employees. So what we did was we launched a telework program, mainly a pilot in the New York area, where we got a number of people involved, and they could volunteer to work from home on a full-time basis or a part-time basis. And the goal of that program was to be able to support employees in an official program and also support the managers as well. And what we've seen over the past 5 years is that it continually evolves. We started the program in 2009. That was the initial program rollout. We did a pilot group, and that pilot group grew to be successful, and so we expanded the pilot group to offer it to New York employees, and then we expanded it throughout the organization. One of the things that we saw, so as we're looking at the last 5 years and the trends, the first trend we were dealing with between 2010 and 2011 was an idea that certain employees and managers were forced to participate in the program. And it was essentially it was necessary in the beginning of the program because it was something different. So there was a lot of management, a lot of managers were looking at the program, and they were concerned about employee performance. They were concerned about managing employees. So we had to put goals out there for each of the business areas. And some people did feel like they were forced to participate. And so what we did in that to address that is when we're doing educational programs or we're sharing surveys, is we asked people, would you feel like you were forced to participate? And the interesting thing within that trend of our program is that we would get a large percentage in the beginning saying, yes, I feel like I was forced to participate. And then we'd ask the question at the next question of the survey is, if you had the choice to go back to the office, would you go back? And the interesting thing is, and this is something we repeated over the years, is that we had a percentage of people that said, yes, I feel like I was forced to participate, and we had one person, not a 1%, one person come back to us and say that they wanted to come back into the office. So even though we were dealing with that and a lot of management pressure as far as the forced participation, that was one of the trends that we dealt with. And so as the program grew steadily over the years, then we started addressing manager concerns. And this is something that all the way across from the beginning of the program up until this day, every once in a while we have certain concerns that managers have. We have people within the organization that come and say, I have a team that is sitting together and they're performing well, but I have another team that's remote and that team is not performing well, and I want to bring them into the office. And so these are the types of things that we're continually dealing with the program, and one of the trends that, depending on what happens, so for instance with Yahoo bringing people in from that were teleworkers, bringing them back into the office, every time something like that happens, it introduces new manager concerns that we deal with. Also, any change in management comes back to us, and a new manager may have concerns. And that's happened over the course of the last 5 years, where somebody may come into the organization, they look at their staff, and they notice that 60% of their staff are working from home on a part-time or full-time basis, and they really want to understand what the program means, how does that impact the team, and how does that impact the team relationship. So that's something that we continue to work with within our telework program. As the years progress, we do annual surveys, and one of the things that we saw that there was a request of employees, and we had to collaborate with our IT group on this, was video conferencing. And so we were able to successfully, it was a concern since 2010 when the program began, and in 2012 we were able to provide desktop video conferencing capabilities for people at home, and that's one of the things that's transformed the telework program and our ability to collaborate with each other. And then as the program matured, now we're starting to get feedback and also looking at how do we provide more value to our employees and our managers. And so we do participant orientation. So when a person comes into the program, we have an educational session once a month that new participants can come in, and we basically go through what their provisioning is, how do they access the provisioning, and talk a little bit about how to work in a more virtual environment. So we went from, in the beginning, with the initial program rollout, dealing with some of the change management, such as the forced participation, looking at managers' concerns across the entire, and to this day, continuing to do that, and then enhancing our technology to make it easier for people to work from home and communicate across the organization, so it's seamless. And one of the great things about this program, and I'm actually a participant of it as well as running it, is it is seamless. When I pick up the phone and I call somebody, it doesn't matter where I am because somebody sees my name and an extension, and to them I'm just in another office. And so that's great as far as creating a culture around it doesn't matter where you are as long as you're accessible. And so as we mature, we've gone through some technical working with each of the participants, making sure they're set up properly, to now we're starting to look at how do we provide value to employees, how do we provide value to managers, and provide them the training they need. And then as we've matured, we've noticed that some of the processes we put in place early on, for instance, we have a survey process that a person had to go through, and they actually had to go through that survey and have manager approval before they moved on to the next steps. And what we noticed is when people approach us, and they've already had a conversation with their manager. They already know that they want to be a part of this process. So we've actually added a more complicated step. And so we've reduced the number of approvals that people need to have. We've streamlined the enrollment process to make sure people are in place. And that continues to this day. We have certain provisioning, such as using we use Office Max, for instance, for people to order their supplies. We offer internet reimbursements. And so now as the program matures, a lot of those things that we were doing ourselves within the corporate real estate organization within the program, we're now starting to figure out, okay, how do we get HR to take some of the things that HR would typically handle? How do we get the IT group to own the printer capabilities that each of the groups has? And so that's what we're working with from a programmatic perspective. Now the key thing across these entire years and with the different trends that we're doing is we've been able to manage to average a 95% average satisfaction rate. And what we do is we started in the beginning, we did we did a biannual survey, and then starting in 2011 we started doing an annual survey. And we really want to be able to tell management that people are satisfied with the program. We do a manager version. We also do an employee version, so we're able to show manager satisfaction versus employee satisfaction. We're able to ask the questions, such as early on when we were talking about forced participation, because all this has allowed us to do over the years is track metrics and data. And that's really the key thing when you're trying to do a program like this. Whether it's supporting teleworkers or supporting flexible work, you're always going to have people come in and say, I'm not sure about this. I don't think this is going to work for my team, and we have the data to back it up. So in addition to our satisfaction survey that we do every year, we look closely at the comments, and the comments that the manager employees give us is directly correlated to some of the things that I put here in the trends. Those are the different things that feedback we get from employees and managers over the years, and we take that feedback and it helps us improve the program. What we've also done too is with the metrics and the data to help support and back up the program itself. When people come and say this isn't working, we've actually compared when we do culture surveys. We do a culture survey every year for all the staff at TI Craft, and we're able to take our AWS, our telework participants, compare them to non-telework participants. And the great thing is over the last 4 years when we've done that, it's actually shown us that a person that works from home feels the same, if not more engaged than a typical employee, which is great news because we don't want to see it below. We want to see it the same or better than a person, because a lot of people come to you and say, they're concerned with employee performance suffering. And one of the things that we see is we also compare that to performance rates of employees that are teleworkers versus non-teleworkers. And we see that that most of our people that are part of our program have a higher percentage rating than typical employees. Also, when we looked at other myths, concerned about work group cohesion and community, that managers are concerned that their team will not be together. Again, this culture survey that we compare shows us that they're the same, if not more engaged than other people. And then also there's the looking at the cost savings. There is some costs. We do provide provisioning to employees. We make sure that if they're full-time, they're eligible for expenses for a desk and a chair. We want to make sure they have the right ergonomic tools for them. But at the end of the day, though, we're saving on our real estate, and we're saving on huge costs in the organizations, relocation, the real estate. The employee is benefited because they're reducing their commuting expenses and that sort of thing. And so I'm going to take a break right here and see if Joshua, if we have any questions from the audience. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type it in the chat box.
Yes, we currently have 2 questions. One moment. Okay, the first one is from Richard. It's what is the overall employee population at the location?
So this represents the entire organization, and only full-time employees can enroll in the program. We have a number of contractors, and the contractors, they're not officially in the program, but we do have a number of remote workers. So what this represents is it represents 14% of our FTE population across the company.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, and then Greg has a question. Were there performance metrics in place previous to the telework that could be used for the after telework implementation?
We didn't do any. Just through our surveys, we were able to ask questions about that. Do you feel, for instance, we asked managers, do you feel that your employees' performance has increased? Do you feel like there is no change? And when we ask those questions in our surveys, we typically get high percentage of approvals that yes, my team is working better or the same. So for instance, with the managers, year over year, of course the employee side, the participant side, we get a high overall satisfaction rate. That's usually around the 98% range. And then managers would be typically lower. It's between the 89% and 90%. The interesting thing with the managers is although they may not completely, I guess, agree with the telework program, they're supportive of it. And then when they answer the question about, do you see any difference? Are you able to engage with your team? Are they able to respond to you? That's where we get the 95% range for the managers coming back to us. So we didn't really do a before and after, but we are comparing non-participants with participants, and then also through the surveys we're getting feedback from the managers.
Okay, great. Greg also had a second question. What is the specific training for managers that may not have ever managed an at-home workforce, and how was that developed?
So as the program evolved, we've started, so instead of handling the technical pieces of it, such as what do I get and how do I get it, we've evolved our program now where we have a monthly community call, and we've been doing that since the beginning of the program. And now what we do is we actually offer training sessions, lunch and learns for managers and employees. So we have a version of working virtually as an employee, and then we also have a version of a training seminar of working virtually for managers. And we've done a little bit of both of each of those, offering to managers and employees. So now we're focusing more on education. We're focusing more on taking away that idea that it's work from home. It's more about working with a distributed workforce, which I'll get into a little bit throughout the rest of the presentation.
Okay, we have one more question. It was from Lydia. It's like, setup was an issue, RE ergonomics, workers' compensation claims, because some employees did not follow the ergonomic guidelines. Also, logistics to set up desks, chairs, etc. was a very cumbersome process. How have you handled these issues if you've had them?
So since the program inception, we also had a key stakeholders group, and part of that key stakeholders group, we had a representative from IT, a representative from HR, and then we also had a representative from our risk group. And that person was the subject matter expert on all things workman's comp. He's keeping track of the trends that are going on. So we're carefully monitoring that, and we're making sure that as things change, that we're able to accommodate that. Essentially, what we do is we offer the ergonomics, we offer the desk and making sure they have the right things. But at the end of the day, the employee does have the I guess the freedom to be able to work however they want. But again, the thing with that is, and I'm not an expert with workman's comp, but we have a group of people that we get together on a regular basis to make sure that if any issues come up, or if anything else is coming up in trends, that we're able to cover it. So as long as the risk guy is happy, then we're in good shape.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all the questions so far.
All right. Well, great. So that was a little bit about our telework program, and now I'm going to go into sort of how is telework, how is flexible work within all of our organizations, how is that progressing, and where is it going, and what does that mean for us as corporate real estate professionals? So I want to go back to, so I talked a lot about telework and supporting people working from home, but I also want to touch on the importance of the office, and I think this is key. For instance, I mentioned briefly an example of a group that wasn't performing well compared to a group that was performing well. They all had the same roles, they were just in different locations. And it is important to have that face-to-face contact. We always need it. It's something that we want to be able to have that natural collaboration. I think there's some energy. I work from home myself, and if I'm working from home too much, it almost feels like being stuck in a cube with high walls at an office, and I need to get out, and I need to be able to do that face-to-face. Even doing something as simple as a video conference, a face-to-face video conference, helps with that. And so that doesn't go away, and there is a need for people to make sure that they do have that presence, they do have the ability to get face-to-face. And it's really important. And what I've seen in my experience, too, is if I meet somebody face-to-face once, any other conversation I have with them afterwards, you have that visual of the person. You've already made that contact, and now you're able to work. So it's really about balance. So you're never going to get away from that having remote teams and natural collaboration, or that water cooler talk that you have. And so now what we have to do is we have to find ways, if we have more distributed teams, to be able to how do we do that when we have teams that are all over the place. So, and then the other key thing too with the importance of the office is just the social aspect of it. The opportunity for you, if you're working remotely, or if you have a team that works remotely, if you pick up the phone, call somebody, it's all business, and there really isn't a lot of that opportunity to have that social time, to get to know somebody, to establish relationships. So the office is important for that, and there is a need to continue to have the office, and there's a need for people to go to the office to be able to do these sorts of things. It's interesting because when I visit one of our offices, I'm sure my team gets really annoyed with me because I'll be sitting there with them, and we're in one room, we're fairly close proximity to each other, and I'm constantly, I feel like I'm interrupting, asking questions that I probably wouldn't typically ask them if I was somewhere else. But you do have that tendency to have those questions, to be able to overhear conversations. So that's also important as well. But on the other hand, remote work is not going away. We continue to have devices that allow us to be connected anywhere, anytime. What the capabilities that I have on my iPhone or my iPad, we have a program called BYOD, Bring Your Own Device, at TICREF that we started about a year ago. And so now I have access to everything for work. I have access to our instant messaging, I have access to email, and so I'm constantly connected. And that's great because that gives me freedom, and that allows me to be accessible anywhere, anytime, and be able to work and not have it matter where I'm sitting, because when you call me, you're getting a hold of me, but it doesn't matter where I am. So it's not going to go away. We're still going to have technology that's going to allow us to do that. We can work anywhere, anytime, And the other thing is, as people are moving around, as we have this more mobility, it's getting more and more difficult, if not impossible, to have that centrally located team. Even if we had everybody together in one office, there's still going to be one person on the team that's traveling. There's going to be one person that's going to be out on vacation. There's going to be one person that is working from home one day a week. So that even though we want to bring people together, we want to have people together, to have that happen 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, the nature of the work that we do just doesn't support that anymore, and the technology that we have. So we're in a position, when we look at work, when we look at how does the work environment support that, we're in a transition period here where we really need to start embracing the need for remote work, and the fact that we're just doing it, so that admitting that we're doing that remote work. The other thing too is that most of us are in organizations, and I'm just showing a national map here, that are global. And so we're looking at TI Crafts locations here. We have main campuses in Denver, Charlotte, and New York. And we have teams that have people in Charlotte, Denver, and New York. So it's impossible, even if we wanted to bring everybody together, it's impossible for us to have the team sitting in the same location. I've experienced that when I was with AOL. I was based out of Northern Virginia. We had teams in New York, San Francisco, and we had a person working from home in Alabama. It was physically impossible for us to have our entire team together all the time, and so we had to find ways for us to be able to get to know each other better. And really one of the key things that happened when I started working remotely with AOL is that I was able to use video to bring not only the team that I saw every day in Northern Virginia, but also bring the other locations together so people could see each other. So it's just not physically possible for us to have everybody in every location. Although we may want everybody to sit together and we may want everybody to come into the office, it's just not physically possible. But we still have a tendency for managers, when they're hiring, they want to hire where most of the team is. And so we even see that here at TI Craft, where when we ask people what their forecasted headcount needs are, they're mainly focused on Charlotte, because that's where the bulk of the management and the people are. We also continue to see wherever the leadership is, that people tend to gravitate towards the leadership when they're hiring. But we also hear from our business areas that they want to hire the best talent regardless of location. So even though they say they want everybody together in a team, they'll have a number of one-offs that says, oh, so-and-so is from Chicago. They can't relocate to Charlotte, so I'd like to be able to have that person stay in Chicago. And the other thing that we're looking at too, so given all of that, given the pressure and the need for people to naturally want to hire where the rest of the team is, there's business continuity issues that we're looking at, where we don't want to have all our people in one location. We don't want all our people to be all in New York. We don't want all our people even on the East Coast, because sometimes storms go up the East Coast that both our Charlotte and New York offices would be impacted, and so we want to make sure we're distributing our workforce across many locations so that we don't have that issue when it comes to business continuity. So we have all these things that are converging right now, where the technology where we can be distributed. We have the need to be distributed for business continuity purposes. We also have the desire too for people to bring people together. So what we're seeing here when it comes to that is, how do we find that balance? How do we become successful, and how are we able to provide that support across locations? How are we able to admit that we have the technology today and that people are doing it? So how do we support that? So one of the things that we need to do as organizations is we need to embrace the new technologies that we have. Video is one of those things that I think it's similar to what email or even IM was a number of years ago. We know it's there. We like the fact that we have it, but it's not our go-to technology. If I'm making a phone call to somebody, I'm still picking up the phone and I'm still just talking to them on the phone, where I have the technology today to call somebody over video and have a face-to-face conversation. So one of the things that we want to continue to do is how do we support a culture that is used to picking up a video call as opposed to as opposed to picking up a phone or using IM? How do you instill that into your day-to-day culture? And that's something that I'm trying to do to this day, is trying to figure out ways to get people to embrace that video technology. Because if you think about it, although you don't have that face-to-face with your team, video is the next best thing to face-to-face. And being on a phone or being on a conference call, you tend to multitask. You tend to do different things when you're on the call. If I'm on a video call and I know my face is there, if I'm dialing into a town hall, for instance, I know that I'm up there and I have to pay attention. I can't be doing other things. I can't be looking at other things. I need to pay attention. So that's the other thing that we want to make sure that we continue to work with people on. Team building. Again, although our teams may be distributed against multiple locations, we need to find ways to take some of that real estate savings that we have and maybe reinvest it into some travel for our teams and getting people together and making sure that they do have that face-to-face. It's something that I know a lot of corporations have been pulling back on that because of travel costs, and they want to reduce the travel costs. But if we look at it holistically, we should be able to make the case that I'm reducing real estate expenses. Let's gives people some flexibility to bring their team in and train managers to do that, to make sure that people do have that face-to-face. Again, you don't have to have a face-to-face every single day, and you don't. Even if you're working with somebody, they're sitting right next to you, there may be days that you don't see that person because they're in meetings all day. So it's happening anyway within our distributed workforce. Communication is one of the key things that I've experienced, and one of the primary benefits of actually telecommuting and working with distributed teams. It's actually forced me to become more aware of communicating my goals to my manager, communicating the results to my manager, and also just picking up on different cues that employees may have. For example, when I was with AOL and I transitioned from working in the office every day to being remote, I picked up on a couple of times on some employees that I could just tell things weren't quite right. And instead of kind of sweeping under the rug because you see somebody every day, I learned that I needed to address it, and I needed to be more transparent, and I needed to communicate better in order to make sure that something little doesn't turn into something big. And I think that's a tool that anybody needs, whether you're in an office every day or you work remotely. But so that's one of the things that remote distributed work helps, is it actually heightens our awareness in the need for communication. I think it creates better employees, it creates better managers. The other thing that's needed too, as you work with distributed team and as we're working with the workforce today, is different skills. And being successful as a remote worker. How do I become visible virtually? And one of the things that I've done as a remote worker is I make sure that if we have a video conference that's connecting multiple offices, that I connect to that video conference, even if it's a town hall where I'm the only person on the screen. So, and I know if any of you, which I hope most of you have been using video conferencing, if you look at a room, you have a table in the middle of the room and a bunch of small faces. So imagine if you're the remote worker, you're dialing into a town hall, and your big head is on a screen in an auditorium, and everybody's the conference rooms, everybody's a little bit smaller. But I think that's one of the key things that helps increase that visibility. When you go to offices, make sure that you make a presence and you socialize and you touch base with people face to face, and you create that virtual presence. So it is, although some of the myths will tell you that a person that works virtually would not be eligible for promotions. They're not in sync with the people in the office. There is a way to be visible in a virtual manner, and I think those are the skills that each of us, whether you're an employee, manager, or person that actually works remotely, these are all the things that are important for being an employee. Using the technology that you have, being able to take the video conferencing, make a video call, schedule a video conference instead of a conference call. Being able to make sure that you have instant messaging so that if you're away from your desk, that people can still be accessible to you. And then make sure you have that communication, and make sure that you're communicating with your manager, make sure that you're communicating with your team and picking up on the different things that are going on within your organization. And the other thing too is making sure that you have that occasional face-to-face. That's really being successful when it comes to remote work, is having that occasional face-to-face, being able to go to an office, see somebody face-to-face, meet them, even if it's for 5 minutes for coffee, making sure that you have that face-to-face so that those future conversations that you have. That's really the key thing, is you want to make sure you make it a point to be seen. Make sure that you go into the office. And so as we're looking at our training programs and our education, as our program matures, we're continuing to put less stress on the fact that it's a work from home, because a person working from home, one person working from home is no different than a team that is based in, say, Charlotte, and they have one person in New York that's sitting in an office. That one person sitting in the office is dealing with the same thing that the remote worker is working. And I think what happens is managers are hesitant for the person working from home, because they feel like if a person's in an office, they're going to behave differently than they would at home. But really, at the end of the day, it's about goals, measuring results, and providing managers the skills to manage that way, providing employees the skills to be able to work in an independent way. And before I move on to what's next, I'm going to go ahead and pause and handle any questions that you guys might have. Joshua, do we have any questions? I'm not sure if Joshua dropped off, and hopefully everybody can hear me that's on the call right now. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. If anybody has a chat question, feel free to put it in the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and just keep moving along here and talk about what's next with the telework program. So one of the next generation of our telework program is really to look at more of a mobility program as opposed to a work from home program. The idea is that people are working anywhere. We want to expand our work arrangements, and we want to make sure it applies to all employees, because not only do we have our work from home people, but we also have people that travel. We also have people that are more mobile in the work environment. And then how do we take a work environment that now is mostly Cuban offices, how do we support that flexible, agile workplace? How do we create the workplace a destination that people do go to the office when they need to, but they also have the flexibility to work anywhere, anytime, and no matter where people are working or where teams are, it becomes normal for people to be able to just dial in or dial into a video conference when everybody is sitting around a table, and make it so that everybody has the same experience regardless of where you are. So that's really what we're primarily trying to achieve here, is we're trying to enhance the workplace itself, so when people come to the office, they do get the most out of it. Because I know that if I go to an office and I'm sitting in a high-paneled workstation, it's really no different than me working remotely, because I'm not really interacting with that many people. I have to make it a point to get out and interact. So we want to create workplaces that force that interaction and creates those intersections, essentially, when you're in the office. So then when I go to the office, it does become more about, I'm at the office to meet with people, I'm at the office to be face-to-face with people. If I need to do heads-down work, I can either do that at home, somewhere else, or somewhere in the office, maybe where I can close the door. So the next thing, too, is looking at the focusing on the workforce itself too. So making sure that when we look at, we may look at groups of people when we're talking about telework. We may look at groups of people when we decide whether people should or should not have that flexibility. But really taking that generalization and focusing it down to the individual, making sure we're giving the individual all the technology, the workplace tools, the different things that they need as an individual to get their job done. What would be great is in the future that we're looking at if it's important for one person to come into the office every day, if it's important for that person to have an office, that person should be able to have an office. But we also want to create a culture that if I'm a peer of that person, that I'm not forced to take an office, or I feel like I need to have an office because my peer has an office. Make it really more about what are the tools that you as an individual need to get your job done. I almost envision this as looking at when you go online and you have those apps where you can build a car. So you go to the Jeep website, for instance, and it says, okay, what kind of car do you want? You pick the car, and it says, okay, what package do you want? You pick the package for that, and then it tells you, okay, you selected this package, so you can't have these three things. So how do we develop a process that supports an employee's career throughout all their life cycles, so that if I'm right out of college, I may come in and say, I need to go to the office every day. I need to be able to, I'm going to be there 5 days a week, but I do want some technology and mobility. So by picking that technology and mobility, that takes away your assigned workspace. You don't have an assigned workspace. You have a hoteling space or touchdown space. If I'm a 5 day a week person, I come into the office every day, then if I select that, okay, you can have your assigned workspace, but you're not going to be able to have the flexible technology to be able to work anywhere, anytime, because you're telling us that you're going to be in the office 5 days a week. You don't necessarily need all that stuff. So that's how do we continue to show people that there is a trade-off? You can't have everything. You can't have the big office in the corner and be able to work anywhere, because we know that if you have the ability to be flexible, you're going to be flexible. You're going to be traveling. So how do we make that workplace more focused on what you need when you're there, and being able to work with people and get them to be able to when they go to the office, be able to know that they're even an office or an open collaborative area, they're all tools to get our job done. So how do we change that perception of the workplace, that it's not just a place I go to, sit down, put my stuff, and just sit there all day and then go home at 5 o'clock. Make that workplace a destination. Make sure that when people go to the workplace, they're doing it for a reason, and they want to go to the workplace. And then if they can't, or if they need to schedule around whether work from home, that they have the ability of it, but we're also taking advantage of the fact that not everybody's in the office every day. And then also the most important thing too is it's really going to become a new skill for corporate real estate planning and implementation. And what I mean by that is we're no longer looking at how many people are we going to grow by and how many seats we're going to need. We need to try to figure out ways that if the company is growing, how does that correlate to corporate real estate needs? In a lot of cases, it's no longer a one-to-one relationship. In a lot of cases, it's no longer I need 6 offices and 8 workstations because these 6 people get the offices, these people get the workstations. Now it's really looking at, and it's kind of flipping things upside down, because it's really difficult for the person that's been used to planning that way to now shift into more of an unknown, because we're looking at flexibility as opposed to black and white. It's much easier for us to say, how many offices do you need, how many workstations do you need? Now we're looking at, well, how is your team going to be using the space? How is each of the people on the team, how are they working, and how do we allocate that to the workplace strategy we have for that person? So instead of looking at titles and whether they get an office or a workstation, now we're gonna focus more on work styles. So how many people on your team have a work style of assigned? So those are the people that are going to be assigned to a workspace, and they're going to have that one-to-one ratio. How many people on your team are going to be full-time remote workers? Well, if they're full-time remote workers, we don't need to assign them a space. How many people on your team are going to be part-time remote workers? If they're part-time remote workers, maybe there's a ratio space that we apply for that person, and they utilize reservable space or shared space. And then who are the people that are traveler? Who are the people that are more mobile? So instead of looking at titles and looking at whether they get an office or a workstation, now it's looking more at how are the people working? How do we want the people to work? And then how do we support them in the work environment? So there will be a new skill that we need for corporate real estate professionals and space planners. And we got about 15 minutes left. Hopefully, Joshua, you're back online here. All right, and I can't see the chat window, and I'm not sure if we can open up the mute to
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Great.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not quite sure what happened.
That's
But
okay.
I do have a few questions. Give me one moment. One question was, how do you deal with when people leave the organization regarding internet service and the desks, et cetera, that have been provided?
So there's been a lot of debate over the years on provisioning. What do we provide them, and then asking for different things back. And we decided a number of years ago that if a person buys a desk, or even if we provision a desk for them, we'd have, and we asked for it back when they left the company, we'd have to figure out a way to not only ship that back to a central location, or and then also ship it to redistribute it. So we don't want to get into the furniture inventory management business. So we set our provisioning at a level where when the person leaves the company, it's a perk. So at the end of the day, we figured that it would cost us more money to manage that furniture inventory, and it would also cost us, and also we have that real estate savings by the person not being in the office, that a person's printer, the chair, that sort of provisioning that we have, that we let them keep that. When it comes to computer equipment, though, we require the person to return the computer equipment.
Great. Are all employees eligible for the teleworking program, or is it restricted to specific work groups?
Pretty much most of the organization is eligible to participate. We do have, because we're a financial services organization, we have recorded lines. We have certain technologies that need to be in place. So there really is, our call center group is really the only group right now that cannot work from home. And that's basically because of the technology. It's not that the technology isn't there. It's just we don't have the technology in place to be able to support that. And then there are some, because we are a financial services company, there are some people that are registered with FINRA for compliance reasons that cannot work from home on a full-time basis.
Thank you. How much does the culture of a business impact the success of a telecommuting program?
The culture is key in creating that success. And not to say that if you don't have the culture today that you can't get there, but you do need to have that support to be able to, for the person that is working from home to have a good experience. And we even see that within our own organization. And that's another thing that over the years I've learned is I've always, when I first started, I was pushing and pushing, saying that it can be successful if it's the right person, they want to do it, they should be not entitled, but they should be able to take advantage of that regardless of how their management feels about it. And I've kind of backed off on that a little bit because I think it's a two-way street. And so when we look at culture, the culture as a whole at TI-CREF supports telework, and we have a great program that supports it, and we have the ability to back that up. But when it comes to individual teams, if you have everybody on the team that is in one location, and you have a manager that is hesitant about having people work from home, if we force that manager to have that employee work from home, then not only is the manager going to have a difficult time with it because maybe they don't have the skills to support that, but the employee themselves will have a bad experience. So we're constantly trying to find that balance of educating the manager, bringing them up to speed and on board and comfortable with it so that the employee will have a good experience. And I'll be honest with you, if I didn't have such great managers over the years, it may have been more difficult for me to work remotely, because you need that person in the office, or you need that person that is talking with other people throughout the day to make sure that they're communicating with you. And I've always said, too, that in other presentations I've done on telework and working distributed teams, the one thing to remember, and this is another one of the myths, is that people think that if I send somebody home, they're going to be a bad employee or a bad worker. That employee, no matter who they are, a bad employee is a bad employee no matter what. I've seen people that are based in an office every day come in an office and see them disappear for 3 hours. So that employee, if they're not motivated, they're not going to be motivated. Same with a manager. A bad manager is going to be a bad manager regardless of whether they have a distributed team or everybody's together. If everybody's together, there's a lot of things that I think gets masked when you're together and you see people every day. But that's one of those things where we're really talking about skills. We're really talking about good managers, good employees, and how do we bring all that together.
Okay, another question from Greg is, what accommodations for space are made, i.e. reserve space for those when they come into the office? Is there a ratio used by and maintained by CREF?
So what we've done over the years, when we first implemented the program, we created what we call an AWS zone, and basically that was a group of spaces on a particular floor where somebody, when they're coming into the office, they could reserve that space for the day or for a few days in order to do work. What we're starting to evolve, and that was centralized. So one of the disadvantages of having it centralized is that all the people that work remotely, their home base would be that centralized area, even though they were working in different departments. What we're evolving that into now is we want to make sure that if somebody comes into the office, that they're able to sit with their team. And so we're starting to do a mix of reservable spaces. So the person that may not be based in New York that's coming to the office, they have the ability to reserve a space prior to showing up. The people that are maybe from that location, now we're starting to implement hoteling space in first come, first serve. So for instance, I mentioned contractors not being a part of our official program. We actually have a large number of contractors in our IT organization. And 2 years ago, we implemented a zone concept where it's probably, I think it's at about a 1.7 to 1 right now ratio. We provide free address spaces for contractors to come in and sit. So we started out with a reserved, and now we're getting a blending of each. And now we're actually getting to a point where we're going to provide spaces within a team so that people have that more flexibility. So it's something that's evolved and it continues to evolve.
Great. Has AWS made available to any employee regardless of department management responsibilities, etc., or is it done on a case-by-case basis?
Well, what we do is we want to make sure that the employee and the manager talk to each other and that they're in agreement that this makes sense. So basically an employee talks to their manager, and then their manager says that so-and-so is interested in the program. So it's really a conversation between the manager and the employee, and then once the manager and employee have a conversation, they decide that this is a good direction to go in, and then they can formally enroll in the program.
Great. What is the average percentage of in-office flexible workspace that TIA-CREF uses for remote employees to work in the office if needed?
Well, we have one location where it's mostly IT people, and that actually, and that's where we started doing the hoteling space for our contractors. In that space, we have over 60% of the space is hoteling type space, and then the remainder of the space is assigned to individuals. Within the rest of the company, our offices are closer to a 1.1 or 1-to-1 ratio. And as we're implementing hoteling space for contractors, as we're implementing more hoteling space for our part-time teleworkers, we're slowly moving the needle where our ratios are higher than a 1-to-1 ratio.
Great. Okay. Are there any groups that didn't work out for remote working?
Not really. I mean, most groups are successful. And like I said before, every once in a while we'll get teams coming to us and saying, I want to bring all my employees back into the office. And what we usually see with that is, although they're saying they want to bring everybody back into the office, they're not really saying that they want everybody to be necessarily in the office every day. So for instance, I'll share two examples real quick. The first example was a team that wasn't performing well and they were distributed and remote. We really focused with that manager on making sure that if they're telling people to come into the office, that they're making sure that when they come into the office, they are going to actually collaborate and talk with each other. And what I mean by that is, if I just, and this is something that I saw with Yahoo, is that there was this and again I don't know really what happened within the organization, but from the press that came, it said, oh, everybody has to come into the office. Well, there may be a valid reason to bring people in the office, but it's really the manager and leadership's responsibility to make sure that when people know why they need to come to the office, and then also that the manager is creating those opportunities for people to be successful when they're in the office. So if the team is dysfunctional remotely, there's probably some issues going on. And if I just tell them to come into the office one day a week, one person may come in on Monday, two people may come in on Wednesday, and it totally defeated the purpose of me forcing people to come back into the office. So what we do is we stress with leaders that it's okay that if you want to bring people in the office if something isn't working, but also let's make sure that you're communicating with your team that this is why we're coming to the office, and you're creating those opportunities. So whether it's a group luncheon on a certain day of the week when people have to come to the office, or it's a staff meeting, making everybody come in for the staff meeting, those are the things that people will be able to say, okay, this is why I'm going to come to the office, and you're forcing that collaboration. The other thing that we've seen too is that a manager just wants people in the office more often, and so again we stress and educate the manager that it's okay to, again, like I said earlier, the office is important, and it's important for people to balance that. We've had instances where a team came to us and said, I have this IT group I'm working with, and they basically, we set a meeting for a Friday, and half the people, even though we needed to be there physically together, half the people said, oh no, this is my day that I work from home, I can't come in, and nobody came in. So those are the instances where we need to make sure that people understand that it's your responsibility as an employee to make sure that you're in the right place at the right time, and make sure that if people need to be physically in the office, that you manage schedules around that. I'm fortunate that most of my team are part-time teleworkers, but if I give them enough heads up saying I'm coming to Charlotte or I'm going to New York, and they adjust their schedules to make sure that we see each other face-to-face. And so that's the other thing, that as our program evolved, it became more of teaching people how to work better in distributed work groups.
Great. We have two questions that are kind of similar to each other. Where do employees keep their files when they come into the office? And how do you manage paper file storage and/or lockable drawer space for your hotel seating?
So what we've done is we've tried a number of things. For instance, in our central AWS, what we call our AWS zone, we have lockers, and a couple of people take advantage of that, where they keep some of their stuff in a locker. They have the key, and they're able to do that. For the most part, people, if they're working remotely on a full-time basis, they'll bring their files in from home, and they'll have most of their stuff that they need, or central filing. And so when we started doing the hoteling space, we made sure that what we noticed too is that a lot of people nowadays, certain groups, certain people, they don't have a lot of paper storage, but we always offer that. So for instance, in our hoteling space, we didn't do anything special. We kept the same furniture layout, but what we did was we basically said, okay, this is your team's space. If you need storage, if you need anything to be able to keep your stuff, here's a centralized bank of files. If you need your own key, we'll make sure it's keyed that way for you. Also, making sure that each of the hoteling spaces, and again, these are just regular full cubes that we're utilizing today. that top drawer, the pedestal file that you have in the workstation is lockable and that people leave the key in it. So we do a lot of etiquette too, where we have a sign in a workstation saying this is how you log into the phone when you come in. Make sure you clean up the desk after you're done. Make sure you leave the key so that when the next person comes in, if somebody has a purse or if there's something that needs to be locked during the day, that they're able to take that key with them for the day and then make sure they put that back in. But again, if anybody needs centralized storing or anything, we make sure we can accommodate that.
Okay, thank you. Workplace injury, how do we cover this when they are working from home? If they injured themselves outside from 8 to 5 office hours, can they claim injury in the workplace?
But again, I'm not an expert on this, but I believe that if you're injured during the workday, I believe that that's covered by workman's comp. But again, I think it's one of those instances where if something happens, then it's they look into it and make sure whatever is covered is covered. So again, I'm not an expert on that, but I know that just from my experiences in talking with the risk people, that I believe that there are certain things that if I'm working from home and it's during work hours. I think it's similar to if you're driving your car during the workday. Okay. But again, I'd ask the professionals for that.
Okay, I'm going to have a question kind of piggyback on that. It says, what was HR's role in the program?
HR has always been, they've been supportive of the program, and then they were the group that made sure that as we're providing the opportunity to work from home, or if there's any issues when it comes to employees and managers, that we had the HR support. So in the beginning we had a lot of HR support, and now there isn't. We don't have as much involvement from HR as we used to. Okay. But it's still something that we're working with them to try to get when new employees are onboarded, integrating with their onboarding process. That if somebody is working remotely, that they have a good experience and they have us as a resource.
Okay, we have about 2 more questions. It says, in addition to hoteling, are there also more conference rooms in a typical office configuration?
We're still, well, an interesting thing at TICREF is the great thing about this program that we established was we're actually changing the behaviors and the culture of the organization, that people are approaching the workplace in a more flexible manner. Now we're starting to build in more of our workplace infrastructure to support that. So just like most organizations with a typical traditional office setup, we have the same problems with not enough conference rooms, not enough spaces for people to meet. So we do have reservable conference rooms, and we're always having stress on that. What we're seeing, though, is when we're implementing more of a hoteling strategy, such as the one office I mentioned earlier, is that we're seeing less pressure of that because people are able to work or to meet where they're sitting next to each other, as opposed to reserving a conference room. So we still have a ways to go on that.
Okay, and I think this is the last question. How many people work remote full-time?
About a little over, so we have about 1,200 people participating. The remote workers have actually had, it used to be 50-50 for the longest time, and now the remote workers, the 5-day-a-week remote workers that are officially enrolled in the program are probably about 60% of that 1,200 is represented by remote. And that's really where, when I was talking about the next steps in the expansion into a workplace mobility program, is we know that there's a large number of people that travel and that may be working from home a couple days a week unofficially. So that's where our workplace mobility program expansion will hopefully be able to capture that. Because I think actually if you looked at our entire organization and we did a survey of everybody to see what each individual work style is, we would probably see that it would shift, those percentages would shift, that most people work part-time. They either travel or work part-time from home, and then the small percentage of the remote workers. But officially in the program right now, the majority, it's on the 60% side.
Great, Jeff. That's all the questions we have. I want to thank you very much for the time and the presentation. It was outstanding. I want to apologize for my audio technical difficulty that I suffered.
That's okay, as long as everybody could hear me.
From what I could gather,
not that you're not important, Joshua. I'm talking, and I asked you the question, and I'm wondering, okay, how long have people been? Have I been talking to myself?
All right. No, I think from what I could gather, you continued on, thankfully.
Good.
I was the one that dropped out for some reason. I will be sending out a PDF of the PowerPoint following the meeting shortly. And again, there will be a survey emailed out. We would appreciate it if you fill that out. Jeff, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you for the opportunity, and I hope that everybody was able to get something from this. I know we covered a lot of ground, and as always, if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me personally.
Okay. Thank you again. You all have a great day.
Thanks.